Chapter 19. Unfamiliar Territory. Mobile Tanker Azalea, December 15th, 1998. The humans stick together on the deck of the ship, avoiding the lower decks, still full of monsters. Over the course of a single day, factions have begun to develop to foster survival. Kamazots and the two remaining Minyade sisters have taken the lowest floor to themselves, forming a temporary ceasefire with a handful of solo traveling vampires, Varkalax, Yakaruna, Annecy, and other Therian-ware creatures. The floor above them has become a dwelling place for demons and other brutes, still hell-bent on fighting all the way to Jockey. The devils gatekeep the top floor, keeping the humans separate from the other monsters. Getting to know the other mages, Jake opens up about the loss of his parents and the murder of his friend Claire. "You poor thing," Laura says, rubbing Jake's arm in comfort. "You've been through so much." Danny rolls her eyes. Zaya notices the gesture and laughs. "I think Allura has called dibs on your friend." "Seems so," Danny says. "I just hope they can stay focused. We're going to need Jake's help to survive." "So, what's this magical city like?" Jake asks. "Is it like the Emerald City, or more like Rivendell?" "Very funny," Danny replies. "Crystalline quartz amplifies magical power, so nearly everything is constructed from it." "Even the buildings?" Jake is shocked. "Don't you get any privacy?" "The core of the buildings and streets are constructed with crystal, but other materials like brick and wood are also utilized. It really does make the place feel like a home." "You seem really fond of the place," Jake says with a smile. Danny returns his smile. "I am. I feel more like I belong there than anywhere else I've ever been in my life. I bet my mother hasn't even noticed I'm gone." "You're wrong about that," Jake says. "She called the police when you disappeared. After a while, they added your name to the list of my victims." "Everyone thinks you've killed me?" Danny whispers. Jake nods. "I've gotten used to it. I need to see my mother and show her that I'm still alive." "And tell her what? That you're living in a magical city on an astral plane? You'd be committed to an insane asylum." "I can't just let her think that I'm dead." "If you're half as cursed as me, your family thinking you're dead will keep them safe." "Jake, I'm sorry." "Stop," Jake says. "It doesn't matter. We can't change anything that happened. All you can do now is stop more lives from being ruined by these monsters." She touches his arm. "No, I need to say it. I'm sorry for everything I put you through. If you want to hate me, I'm okay with that. I already hate myself for what I've done. You helped me stop Yamura from killing even more people. You brought Amy back to life. And you calmed me down when I was a total emotional wreck. I may never be able to forgive you, but I don't hate you. We all played our parts. I'm just as guilty for every life that Yamura stole. If I hadn't been so petty with jealousy, I wouldn't have opened myself up to possession in the first place." "Yeah, but if I hadn't come along and interfered, you'd still be at school with your friends." Danny pauses, emotion in her voice. "Both of your parents would still be alive." "That isn't true. My dad's disappearance had nothing to do with you or Yamura. Khan still would have killed him, and I wouldn't have had the strength to get my revenge." Allura interrupts their conversation, not wanting to be forgotten. To her, Jake's affection is still a goal. What's it like to have someone inside of you? She asks Jake. Jake opens his mouth to speak, but Danny kicks him in the shin. Don't you dare say it. You're no fun, Jake grumbles. Anyways, it's like having a conscience while there's a gun to your head and you're forced to do bad things. Except you don't even get the choice to resist, because it's more like you're riding in the passenger seat the whole time. He pauses. Well, it was like that before, but things have gotten a lot better. Yamura and I are able to cooperate a lot more now. You purposely let him have control? Danny asks angrily. Sometimes, if the opponent is too strong for me alone, I don't have much of an alternative. Yamura's had the opportunity to go on killing sprees, but he's proven to me multiple times that we have a common cause to fight for. And that is more important than needless killing. And when Inyana and Hui are gone, what then? When he doesn't need you anymore, you don't think he won't try again to remove you and gain total control? I can't worry about that now. We have to focus on Jockey Island and the tournament. You actually sound like you're looking forward to the tournament, Danny says, confused. You are, aren't you? Jake shrugs. I did pretty good in the last one, and that was before I was bonded to Yamura. I've defeated plenty of GX-enhanced mutants to know that I scale up pretty well now. I can speak from experience that there are things out there a lot more frightening than those mutants we fought at the hospital. You ever heard of a Revenant? Or the Saints? The latter doesn't sound too scary. The Saints are the worst. They're the devils that even the devils are scared of. The ship rocks violently and Danny stumbles, her face turning green. You good? Jake asks. I hate the ocean, Danny groans. Jake laughs. Don't worry, you have a few days to get your sea legs. In the meantime, did anyone pack a volleyball for our beach vacay? The mages ignore Jake, returning their focus to the looming tournament on Jockey. If the Devils are the biggest competition, a one-on-one against any of them will be a poor matchup for us, Zaya says. Their anti-magic will be a serious problem, Danny replies. We can't even face them directly with all of their psychic powers. We gotta hope that Jake faces them in the tournament. He seems like the best fit at being able to take one of them down. Is he really that strong? Provost Butler asks, eyeing Jake with skepticism. We really haven't seen him accomplish anything that would lead us to believe he's all that tough. I mean, he wasn't even the one who killed that devil before. Trust me, he is as dangerous as Danny says, Zaya argues. You were already mostly out of the fight by the time he joined in, but I was still on the front lines and I got to see it for myself. He's as much of a monster as anything on this boat, Zaya says. How is that a good thing? Butler whispers. Because I'm the monster on your side, Jake speaks up. Look, I get it. None of you trust me. How could you? The last time I met any of you, I was out of my mind, trying to kill every living thing in sight. It was Danny that stopped that. She fixed me, and I owe her. If you can't trust me as an ally, at least trust in her. She knows what she's doing. I know Jake can handle the devils, Danny says. They may have some powerful abilities, but one-on-one, I don't think they're as strong as a Sicarii at full power. Even if that were true, the problem is, there are 3 of them left. The chances one of us will eventually have to face one of them are high. We need a way to deal with them ourselves. Exorcism, Jake says, surprising Danny. My grandparents were able to banish the spirits of devils back to hell with a special kind of magic. Your grandparents know magic? Danny asks, stunned. She wonders why this information never showed up in any of his memories during her walk through his dreamscape. Jake nods. My grandfather worked with a priest, specializing in defeating devils. My grandmother was once possessed by one. Together they know a lot about the bastards. Do you know the spell your grandfather used to banish the spirits of the devils? Danny asks excitedly. Hope of having a weapon against the strongest enemies they have encountered is sorely needed after losing so many of her friends already. They've not even reached the island or begun the tournament, and yet she is down 3 members of her team. My grandfather taught me the words, and I memorized the symbols, but I have no idea how to make them work. I'm not sure if I can even use magic. If your grandparents can use magic, the chances of you being a natural are high. Teach us the exorcism spell, and I'll teach you the basics, Allura says. We can help each other. We have 8 days for all of us to become stronger. Are you okay with this? Zaya asks Danny. Him learning magic could become a real problem for us later down the road. We need that exorcism spell. If that's the trade-off, it's well worth the future risk. The elders already don't expect us to come back alive. What will they care about how we manage to defy their expectations? Danny says. Allura hands Jake a tube of lipstick, and he begins to sketch the spell array for exorcism on the ship's deck from memory. It's a variation of control magic, Zaya says, recognizing some of the designs of the symbols. It makes sense, Danny adds. We're commanding a devil to depart from a human body. Yeah, but look at the outer ring. Those are level 8 enchantments. Zaya looks over at Jake. Your grandparents could really pull off 8th level control spells? Jake gives her a blank stare. I have no idea what any of that means. Allura pats his arm. It's okay, you're new to all this. Sorry, all the games I've played with a magic system, you just sorta already have access to magical abilities. Actually having to learn and understand this stuff seems a lot more complicated, Jake says. Games? Butler repeats, irritated. Is this really the hero we're having to rely on? We're going to be fucking decimated out there. Allura glares at her fellow mage. The spell still stands up, right? This is something we can work with, she says to the others. Theoretically, we can change the symbols to downgrade the spell to a level we can perform, Provost Sinnoh says. But lowering the level of a spell will also lower its potency. Alyssa hops down from a nearby railing and walks over to the circle, stabbing her sword into the center. O Renin, she chants, causing her blade to glow brightly. Learn. What did you just do? Zaya asks. Enchant your swords to learn exorcism. Even if you cannot perform level 8 spells, your sword should be able to handle them, Alyssa explains. How is it that these non-mages keep teaching us magic? Butler asks, confused. Provost Butler, Zuberi, and Sinnoh, along with Danny and Zaya, teach their swords the exorcism magic. The others work to memorize the spell array and the symbols. Abite Diabolus, Verlinque, Hoc Capore, Ne nos crucies amplius. Virtuus Christi te urgent, Jake chants. That's the incantation my grandfather taught me. He also said a small prayer with it, but I don't think it was necessary for the spell. More of a personal preference. That sounds like Latin, Butler says. Allure nods. Fluent in the language as well as Spanish, French, and modern Italian. It is. Your grandfather must have been the real deal. We might actually be able to pull this off against those devils. Jake repeats the incantation several times, until the mages are confident they have it memorized. After this, Allure begins her training of Jake. I know you can sense energy, but can you distinguish between different types? Allure asks. I can tell the difference between a human and, say, a Sakari or a devil. I know when something non-human is nearby, but nothing beyond that. But what about magic? Can you sense the energy that composes a magical spell? Jake nods. To an extent. Magic leaves a metallic taste in my mouth when it's active near me. Allure smiles. Good. Learning about energy and how to sense it is the hardest step of beginning magic. Alright, I'm going to move forward. Tell me to slow down if you get confused. Spells are divided into basic elemental categories. You can combine any number of these elements in infinite ratios to create an infinite number of unique spells. Apprentices start off learning fire magic, since it's the easiest to get a grasp of. The elements of wind, earth, and water come in next, in various combinations varying on natural affinity. Attempting these 4 elements, you'll learn what your natural affinity is. You don't have to specialize in spells of this element, but those you do learn will come easier, and it'll be more powerful if they match your affinity. Yamura knows fire magic, Jake says, and I can mimic a weaker version of his black flame ability. I'm not sure if it's actually magic, but the basis is probably the same. Can you show me? Allure asks. Focusing inward, Jake summons the black flame in his hand. Like I said, it's weaker than what Yamura can do. Wow, Allure whispers. I can definitely sense fire element in this ability, but the rest is made up of a kind of element I've never sensed before. It's chaos, Danny speaks up. The element of darkness. Scrimauer summoning spells and puppet magic all use this same kind of energy. Darkness energy? Zaya whispers. What do you mean? It's not in the air all the time like the other elements, Danny says. It has to be drawn out. I don't know where it comes from, but Scrimauer sort of just made the energy appear when he began his spells. Yamura takes control. I was once told by my teacher, Ashkelon, that the black flame is drawn from the aura of Tiamat, the dragon of chaos. Ashkelon said that Tiamat existed before the world was even formed. The dragon dwelt in the empty nothingness of space, when solid matter was formed by the Creator God. A balance had to be maintained. Tiamat's power grew to match each amount of energy invested into new matter. I always thought it was just a myth, but there may be more to the story. Whoa! Allure shouts out in surprise. Warn us next time you're going to switch like that. Sorry, Jake says, taking back over. That was something Yamura wanted to share, not me. I didn't even know that story. This darkness, or chaos, sort of sounds like antimatter. If there's any truth to that dragon myth, Sinnoh says. It would also explain how Danny says it seemed like Scrimauer was able to pull the energy for his dark spells out of seemingly nowhere. If you can use 2 elements, we already have a head start on forming spells. We just might be able to get you up to par before we reach Jockey, Allure says. That would be awesome, Jake says with a grin. Anything extra I can add to my repertoire will help me overcome Hui. Should you really be focusing on Hui? Danny asks. We have devils and God knows what else to contend with. What if you never even get a match against Hui? You need to be prepared for anything. I'm going to fight Hui, Jake says. I know that it's inevitable. Danny sighs loudly in frustration. Why are you always so stubborn? Jake shrugs. Who knows? Sounds like someone else I know, Allure laughs. I'm nowhere near as stubborn as him, Danny protests. The other mages begin to laugh. Allure uses one of her brushes to draw the element of earth in the air. This is the symbol for earth. Try and focus on this symbol in your mind, and add weight to it from the energy around you. Jake struggles, dropping to a knee. Damn it! I can't do anything but stare at a damn image in my mind. Nothing's happening. Being able to succeed at magic is like having a strong religious faith. You have to fully commit yourself into believing something you can't physically see other than what's in your mind. Eventually, if your faith is strong enough, you'll begin to sense the presence in the air around you. Much like people claim to feel the presence of God. You'll taste the magic in the air and feel it brushing against your skin in every breeze. Magic will become a part of you. You'll live with it, and because of it, you'll breathe it in, and it will breathe you in as well. You'll form a symbiosis, unable to see the world without seeing the magic and all facets of life anymore. Wow, Jake whispers, standing back up. You're good at this pitch. You're going to have to be too if you want to be able to successfully cast before we reach Jockey. It won't be easy to retrain your mind. Humans are inclined to be stubborn and disregard things that cannot be proven and may seem too outlandish to believe. Because you've already faced so many things that other people would deny, you should not have this bias to overcome. Your mind is going to be much more receptive to learning new things about the world because you have already had your worldview torn down and reshaped before. What if believing isn't enough? Jake asks. Surely there are those who believe strongly but still can't succeed. If you open yourself up to failure, you've already accepted defeat. You must believe with your whole heart that you can do this. You can't give yourself any room for doubts to creep in. Jake nods. Just tell me what to do. You already seem to have an affinity for fire, so we should build off that foundation, Allure says. She draws a fiery symbol in the air. This is the marking used to represent the magical element of fire. Focus inward on projecting the symbol from within your own body, drawing the energy from inside to fuel the flames. Tiny sparks of flame flash above Jake's open palm, resembling the flint of a lighter. Frustrated, Jake closes his hand and begins to pace. You need to have more patience, Allure says. You aren't going to master this in an hour. Most mages train for years before ever being accepted as even an apprentice. We don't have years, Jake says, angry with himself. I have to figure this out before we get to Jockey Island. He opens his palm and begins to concentrate once more. Shaking, the teen pushes his entire body and mind past its limits to manifest the flames. More sparks pop and flash, trying to breathe the fire to life. Focus more on the sparks, Allure says. You have the right idea, but once you get a spark, You need to drop everything else and hold on only to that spark. Once you have that spark, then focus on feeding it and growing it into a full flame with magical energy. Jake focuses on a spark, fueling it with his own energy. The spark blossoms into a black flame. Like that? Alora shakes her head. Not exactly. You have the right idea, but you fed the flame with your own energy. That's why you were able to summon a black flame. All you did was change the spark into the chaos you already know how to wield. You have to fuel that spark with the elemental energy around you. You have to draw magic out of the air and the metal on this boat and off the waves of the ocean, in addition to within yourself. Magical energy is different from your physical energy. You need to focus on the spiritual and elemental aspects of the world. Dismissing the black flame, Jake again tries to create a spark. This time, he focuses on drawing energy from the elements around him. The spark flutters and dances, in danger of extinguishing. Yet Jake holds on to this concentration and continues to feed the flame to a full fireball. Awesome, Laura says, clapping her hands together. That's more like it. Jake dismisses the flames and takes a deep recovery breath. That was tough. Once you know how to do it, it should get easier each time. If you say so, Jake sighs, wiping the sweat off his face with his shirt. He catches Alora staring at his abs, causing her to blush and turn away. As forward as Alora seems to be, Jake wonders how much of her shyness is really just part of an act. Work on summoning fire on your own for the rest of the day. I've got my own training to do. Tomorrow we can meet back up and begin the next step. Jake nods. Okay, but I gotta ask, why do you mages need to cast a spell with a chant, if you can make the fire without it? A spell having a command word serves several purposes. First, giving something a name gives it power. This has been true throughout all recorded history, and I suspect even longer. Second, a spell being tied to a specific command trains your body to draw it out much more quickly. So it's like a Pavlov's dog's response, Jake says to himself. Huh? Alora's confused. Unlike Jake, she isn't very interested in science. A long time ago, a researcher ran a test that every time he fed his dog a treat, he rang a bell. After a while of doing this, just ringing the bell made the dog salivate in anticipation of getting a treat. The dog became so conditioned to know the bell was associated with a treat that hearing the sound automatically triggered a physical response in the dog's brain to begin salivating. So, if my body hears a spell word, if I've conditioned it well enough to respond, it will instinctively manifest the correct energy needed without me having to consciously gather it together. Alora thinks about this for a few seconds. I've never thought about it that way, but yeah, I guess you're right. Once I've gotten manifesting the fire element down, then what? Jake asks. Don't get too far ahead of yourself. You may already be able to express the fire element, and even supplement it with the chaos energy, but it will take tons of repetition and practice to condition your body to draw out the energy as if it were second nature. Eventually, I want you to be able to replace that darkness with a different element. Combine fire with something else. Even in a small amount, you'll be able to form another spell. Jake nods, smiling. He has a good feeling about his training after his success. You're a really good teacher. Thanks. Alora shakes her head. This can't be a one-sided relationship. What? Jake blinks several times, stunned. What do you mean? I'm going to be in this tournament too, Alora says. If I can't hold my own, why did I even come along? Alright, that's fair, Jake says, sliding his left foot back into a light fighting stance. Don't hold back. Come at me with everything you have. It won't do either of us any good holding back. Allure quickly throws her hands out, knocking Jake off his feet with a pulse of magical energy. She rushes, boosting her speed as she runs with a whispered Creonle spell. Jake catches himself with one hand to break his fall and pushes off the ground, flipping over the girl as she lunges. Allure pivots, trying to catch Jake with a roundhouse kick, but he blocks with a forearm and grabs her ankle with his other hand. With one smooth motion, Jake rotates Allure's ankle and sweeps her base leg to plant the girl on her back. Don't toy with me, Allure shouts in frustration. If you can't beat me easily, just do it. I'm not going to learn anything if you're holding back. Allure again rushes, trying to blitz Jake with her enhanced speed, even boosted to a Creonle dose. She is unable to overcome the more experienced and combat-tested teen. Jake evades each of the girl's strikes, never once retaliating with any offense of his own. Allure's frustration mounts and her technique suffers. After her next punch is dodged, Allure stumbles off balance and falls to the deck of the ship clumsily. Do you really think that you're making this easier on me? Allure asks, crawling back to her feet. You're only rubbing it in that I have zero chance against you, or any other monster that we're going to face on Jockey. I already know I'm not going to make it. You don't think that terrifies me? Jake takes a deep breath, seeing bits of Claire and Allure. He's painfully reminded how she too was painfully dragged against her will into a war between the Sicarii. If you screw up and lose or get disqualified, it will be up to me and my friends to stop the Sicarii and win the tournament, Allure says. That keeps just as much pressure on us to be ready as you. Screaming, Allure pushes her body even harder. Creonle, Shea! Multiplying her base stats by 4. Allure runs at Jake and throws a right hook, followed by a quick left. Blocking each with his forearms, Jake uses his knee to deflect the kicks that follow immediately after. Refusing to give up without giving it her all, Allure strains her body past its breaking point and goes for a 5 times Creonle multiplier. She isn't a great fighter, and her body isn't conditioned for battle, but her stamina is high, and she has built up a deep reservoir of magical energy to draw from. At 5 times boosted, Allure knows that she must now be fast enough to force Jake to show her his true strength. She fires a burst of fire magic at Jake, causing him to leap back in evasion. As soon as this distance is created, Allure falls up with a gust of wind magic. Jake throws his weight back into a flip, but as soon as he lands in a crouch, Allure is on him with a roundhouse kick. Landing her first physical blow on Jake, Allure feels her pride slightly elevated. Now she can at least have the satisfaction of knowing that his power isn't out of her reach completely. Jake twists his body to lessen the damage of Allure's kick, and pivots, catching her with a spinning heel kick to the back of her head. The blow nearly sends Allure into unconsciousness, and as she hits the ground, she fights against waves of nausea and smothering darkness. Jake straightens, giving the girl time to recover. If it were Hui, he would not hesitate to continue the pursuit and go in for the kill. Allure stands back up, slightly wobbling as her internal balance is not yet recovered. Blood runs down the teen's lips and she fights, off the clouds of black, attempting to swallow her awareness. Damn it, Allure groans. I think that's the hardest I've ever been hit in my life. Jake grimaces. Sorry, I tried to hold back. Angered that he is still making a fool of her, Allure rushes Jake again. As she throws a left hook with her remaining strength, Jake deflects the blow to the side with one hand. Left exposed, Allure has no way to defend her chest in that moment, as Jake delivers an open palm strike to her center. The girl's eyes roll back in her head, and she is lifted off the ground by the force before crashing back down out cold. Rather than allow Allure to possibly hit her head on the floor, Jake moves quickly to catch the girl in his arms and gently set her back down. Watching the sparring match, Danny simply shakes her head and begins to walk off. "You're still too soft." "You aren't my enemies," Jake says. "Not now we aren't," Danny replies. "But if it comes down to me versus you in the tournament, I'm not going to hold back." After a few minutes, Allure regains consciousness. "That sucked," the girl groans in pain. "Are you good?" Jake asks, concerned. "Yeah," Allure says, allowing Jake to help her to her feet. "But I have a few things I want to work on solo. I recommend you also keep practicing. We don't have unlimited time to get stronger. We have to push ourselves non-stop." Allure walks off to begin her own solo training. She knows that she will have to step up her own game if she wants to provide an active contribution to the team's efforts. Each mage needs to increase their skill and add new tools to their repertoire. None of them wishes to be the weak link, and as such, all want to be in a position to win the tournament should one of their allies fall. With her focus being on support and enhancement magic, Allure knows that a few days will not be enough to raise her combat ability to anywhere near the level of mages like Danny or Zaya, let alone surpass them. Instead, Allure's way to fight in the tournament must be through summoning magic. If she can summon a strong enough being to fight on her behalf, Allure then needs only to increase her stamina in order to lengthen the time she's able to maintain her spell. Drawing a spell array on the deck with her makeup, Allure concentrates on her summoning ritual. The circle glows brightly as the mage draws out the energy needed for the summons. "Siog, Kalin, Halagar, Savanvit," Allure chants, activating her spell. The circle is engulfed in white light, before sparkles like metallic glitter condense into the form of a small winged fairy girl. Allure stares at the cherubic, summoning with concern. This isn't going to cut it. The fairy girl, Halagar, tilts her head, trying to understand the mage. "I'm going to have to power you up significantly before the tournament. I'll be murdered right away if I try to fight with you at this level of power."